So one of the issues that I notice some students have is that once they get good at adding and subtracting positive and negatives, they start mixing up the rules for multiplying and dividing positive and negatives too. So I wanted to make a video about that to clarify that the rules are going to be different. So just like, for example, the rules for 3 plus 4 are going to be different than 3 times 4, right? So when you have 3 plus 4, you would just add them together. You'd have 7, right? But 3 times 4, you would get 12. Now, they're completely separate operations, and so the way that you would solve these would be completely different. It's the same thing when we're talking about positive and negatives, okay? So when we're multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers, basically, if they're the same signs, then your answer is going to be positive, and if they're opposite signs, then it's going to be negative. So for example, if you have 5 times 3, you're going to get 15 because they're both positive, so you end up with a positive 15. A negative 5 times a negative 3, again, they're same signs, so you end up with a positive 15. But if one of them is negative and one of them is positive, then you get a negative 15. So all you do is figure out what the sign is going to be first. So if it's going to be positive or negative, and then you do the multiplication. So 5 times 3. And if you have 5 times a negative 3, again, they're opposite signs. So it's going to be negative, and then 5 times 3 is still 15. Same thing with division. So if you have 28 divided by 7, well, figure out the sign first. And because they're both positive, then it's going to be positive, and then you do the division. So 28 divided by 7 gives you 4. If you have negative 28 divided by a negative 7, they're same sign. So again, you get positive 4. Negative 28 divided by positive 7, because they're opposite signs, your answer is going to be negative. And then again, 28 divided by 7 is 4. And then lastly, if you have a 28 divided by negative 7, again, they're opposite signs, so it's a negative, and 28 divided by 7 is again 4. So basically, if when you're multiplying and dividing, if the two signs are the same, then your answer is going to be positive, and if the two signs are opposite, then it's going to be negative. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that there are actually a lot of different signs that are talking about multiplication and division. So you'll notice that multiplication sometimes we'll use the X, sometimes we'll just have parentheses around the numbers. Sometimes the parentheses will just be around one number, or so it might be the first number or the second number, especially if one of the numbers is negative. Okay. For division, we usually have this division sign, or we have a slash, or we'll write it as a fraction. All three of those identify as division.